In this lecture, we will discuss about the comparison of three types of the muscle tissues, or the difference between skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. All these types will be differentiated in this lecture. On the left, we will see the characteristic features of these muscles. In this way, first of all, we have the location. When it comes to the location, skeletal muscles are attached by the tendons to the bones. Means they are attached by the tendons to the skeleton. And when it comes to the smooth muscles make the walls of intestines, large arteries, blood vessels, and the smooth muscles are also present in the erector muscles of the hair follicles and ciliary and iris bodies of the eyes. And thirdly, when it comes to the cardiac muscle is present in the heart, that is the obvious. Second, we have shape of fibers. We have the shape of fibers or microscopic appearance and features. When it comes to the shape of the fibers, the shape of the skeletal muscles are long cylindrical fibers. They are long cylindrical fibers. Skeletal muscles are elongated, blunt ends, and that are unbranched. And in case of the smooth muscle, the shape of the fibers of the smooth muscle are elongated as well, spindle shaped, pointing ends, and thickest in the middle, like this. This is the thickest in the middle. Shape of smooth muscle. And in case of the cardiac muscle, when it comes to the cardiac muscle, the shape of the cardiac muscle, it is also elongated, cylindrical, but it is branched. Thirdly, we have the situation in the list of the characteristic features of these muscles. Skeletal muscle is also called striated muscle. Why it is called striated muscle? Because the striations are present in them. That is why it is called the striated muscle, and striations are present in them. When it comes to the smooth muscle is also called non-striated muscle or unstriated muscle, because the striations are absent, because the striations are not present in these type of the muscles. And when it comes to the cardiac muscle is also called the striated muscle, like the skeletal muscle, due to striations present in the cardiac muscle. And fourthly, we see the characteristic feature of these muscles, that is the number of nuclei for fiber. When it comes to the number of nuclei for fiber, we can come to know that the skeletal muscles, they have many nuclei. They have the multi-nucleated. They are multi-nucleated muscles. And in case of the smooth muscle, there is one single large nuclei. And respectively, there is the third one, the cardiac muscle, which has one or two nuclei per fiber. And the fifth, we see the position of nuclei in these cells, the position of the nuclei in these muscles. When it comes to the skeletal muscle, the position of the nuclei in skeletal muscle is peripheral. Nuclei, there are they are multinucleated. They have the many nucleus, and they are the position of these nucleus are peripherally. And when it comes to the smooth muscle, the position of the nuclei in the smooth muscle cell, that is the centrally located, a single large nuclei. And in case of the cardiac muscle, when it comes to the cardiac muscle, we see that like the smooth muscle, the cardiac muscle has as well centrally located nuclei. It contains one or two nuclei. The sixth characteristic feature is the size or the diameter of these fibers. Now, what is the size of these fibers? What is the size of these fibers or the diameter of these muscle fibers? Skeletal muscle, the diameter of the skeletal muscle, the size of the skeletal muscle is very large with 10 to 100 micrometer in diameter. And smooth muscle is the smallest with smallest of all the three with 3 to 8 micrometer in diameter. And when it comes to the cardiac muscle is intermediate, or it is large in size with 10 to 20 micrometer in diameter. Now, another characteristic feature is the connective tissue components. The skeletal connective tissue components. The skeletal muscle has got epimysium, paramysium, and endomysium like connective tissue components covering. Means the skeletal muscles are they has got the endomysium connective tissue covering, paramysium connective tissue covering, and the endomysium connective tissue covering. When it comes to the smooth muscle has got only endomysium connective tissue component. And the thirdly, now we will see the thirdly, we see in cardiac muscle has got paramysium and endomysium connective tissue covering. And the now let us see let us see, is there any contractile protein organized into sarcomeres? Let us see the eighth characteristics is is there any contractile protein into sarcomeres? We see that skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles have present contractile proteins. We see that skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscle have present contractile proteins into sarcomere. When it comes to the smooth muscle does not have any contractile protein into sarcomeres. Now, the ninth characteristic feature is the junction between the fibers. The skeletal muscles does not have any junction between the fibers. And when it comes to the smooth muscle, there is the gap junction, but in visceral smooth muscles, and none in multi-smooth muscles. When it comes to the cardiac muscle, there is the intercalated discs which contain gap junctions and desmosomes. The ninth and then the 10th characteristics in the list of the characteristic features of these muscles, that is the autorhythmicity. When it comes to the skeletal muscles, there is no autorhythmicity in these skeletal muscles. And in case of the smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle, there we see the autorhythmicity in these muscle fibers, and in response to the contraction and the relaxation, there is the autorhythmicity in the cardiac muscle and the smooth muscle. Another property, we see the regulatory protein for contraction. The skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscle have troponin and tropomyosin as a regulatory protein for contraction, while as smooth muscle have calmodulin myosin light chain kinase as a regulatory protein for contraction. Now, looking at the speed of the contraction as a characteristic feature of these muscle fibers, the speed of contraction in skeletal muscle, that is rapid, or that is the fastest. When it comes to the smooth muscle, the speed of the contraction in smooth muscle is slowest of all the three muscles. And while as the speed of contraction in cardiac muscle, that is moderate in nature. Now, let us see the type of control. control in these muscle fibers. Skeletal muscle is voluntary in nature. The type of control is voluntary. This skeletal muscle is governed by somatic nervous system, while as the smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle, they are involuntary in nature. The type of control in these muscle fibers is involuntary in nature, and they are governed by autonomous nervous system. Now finally we see the contraction regulation neurotransmitters. It is acetylcholine in skeletal muscle as a contraction regulation protein neurotransmitters, and it is acetylcholine norepinephrine and acetylcholine norepinephrine in smooth muscles and cardiac muscles as contraction regulation neurotransmitters. So these were the major differences between the skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Hope you might have understood the lecture very well. Thank you. All the very best.